The darkness of space tore open like a wound. One moment there was nothing but empty void beyond the orbit of Neptune. The next moment, ships began pouring through rifts in reality itself. They came by the dozens, then by the hundreds, then by the thousands. Each vessel was massive, covered in dark metal plates and glowing with strange purple energy. They formed a wall of death that stretched across millions of miles. Grand Admiral Korvax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator, and watched his fleet assemble with pride swelling in his chest. His golden scales caught the light from the display screens around him. His crimson eyes reflected the image of 3,000 warships, each one capable of burning entire continents to ash. "The fleet has fully arrived, Grand Admiral," reported Subcommander Varys, a younger officer with pale green scales. "All ships report ready for conquest operations." Korvax allowed himself a thin smile. His pointed teeth gleamed in the dim light. "Excellent. Set course for the third planet. The one the primitives call Earth." The Zarveth Empire had conquered 400 worlds across 3 galaxies. Some civilizations had fought back. Some had surrendered immediately. Some had tried to flee. None had survived. The Zarveth war machine was perfect. Their technology was supreme. No species in the known universe could match their power. Earth would be their 401st conquest. The humans were a young species, barely capable of reaching their own moon. Their weapons were primitive chemical explosives. Their ships were fragile tin cans that could barely survive their own atmosphere. This would not be a battle. It would be a harvest. Far across the solar system, sensors detected the alien arrival within seconds. Commander Daniel Hayes sat in the control room of Orbital Defense Station Sentinel, a massive structure hidden in the shadow of Earth's moon. He watched the data scroll across his screens with calm, steady eyes. His coffee sat untouched beside him, growing cold. "Sir, I'm counting over 3,000 ships," said Lieutenant Katie Brooks, her fingers dancing across her console. "They're big. Really big. The largest ones are nearly 2 miles long." Hayes nodded slowly. "Classification? Unknown configuration. Nothing in our database matches. But the energy signatures suggest weapons capability far beyond anything we've seen before." Brooks paused and looked at her commander. "Sir? Should we sound the alarm?" Hayes picked up his coffee and took a sip. It was cold, but he didn't seem to notice. "No need for alarms, Lieutenant. Just notify command and continue monitoring. We knew this day would come eventually." Brooks stared at him. She had served under Hayes for 3 years and had never seen him panic about anything. But this was different. This was an alien invasion force that could probably destroy Earth 100 times over. And he was drinking cold coffee like it was just another Tuesday. "Sir, with respect, shouldn't we be doing something?" Hayes smiled slightly. "We are doing something, Lieutenant. We're watching. That's our job. Other people have other jobs. Let them do theirs." Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, those other people were already at work. Dr. Laura Kim walked through corridors carved from solid granite, passing through security checkpoints that scanned her DNA, her retinal patterns, and even her brainwave signatures. She had made this walk thousands of times over the past 15 years, but today felt different. Today, all her work would finally have a purpose. The Prometheus facility was humanity's greatest secret. It had no official existence. No government acknowledged it. No budget documented it. Only a handful of people on Earth knew what lay hidden beneath these mountains. Kim entered the main control center, a vast circular room filled with holographic displays and humming machinery. Her team was already assembled, 20 of the smartest physicists, engineers, and programmers on the planet. They had spent decades preparing for this moment. "Status report," Kim said, her voice calm but firm. Ryan Parker, her lead technician, pulled up a display. "All systems are green, Doctor. The array is powered and ready. We can achieve full deployment in under 3 minutes once we receive authorization." Kim nodded and allowed herself a small breath of relief. "Good. We wait for the call." In Washington, D.C., Secretary of Defense Paul Mercer received the news in his underground office. He read the report twice, then set it down on his desk. His face showed no fear. His hands did not shake. He simply picked up his secure phone and dialed a number that existed in no directory. General Nathan Cole answered on the second ring. "I assume you've seen the sensor data." 3,000 ships, Mercer said. "Biggest invasion force we've ever theorized about. About what we expected. Maybe a little more." Mercer almost laughed. "Expected?" "Nathan. Most people would be losing their minds right now." "Most people don't know what we know," Cole replied. "What are your orders, sir?" Mercer was quiet for a moment. Outside his window, the world continued spinning. People went to work. Children went to school. Couples walked their dogs in the park. 7 billion humans had no idea that death was approaching from the stars. They had no idea that their survival depended on decisions made in the next few hours. "Activate Prometheus Protocol," Mercer said. "Full deployment authority granted." "But Nathan, we give them a chance first. We're not murderers. We warn them." "Understood, sir. And if they don't leave?" Mercer closed his eyes. He thought about his daughter, his grandchildren, every innocent life on this planet. Then he thought about the millions of lives aboard those alien ships. They were invaders, yes, but they were also living beings with families of their own. The decision he was making would end all of them in an instant, but there was no choice. "Not really. If they don't leave," Mercer said quietly, "then God forgive us for what we're about to do." After this, he hung up the phone and sat alone in the silence. Above him, beyond the sky, beyond the moon, the alien armada continued its approach. They had no idea that the primitive species they planned to conquer had been preparing for this day for 30 years. They had no idea that humanity had developed technology that broke every law of physics the galaxy understood. They had no idea they were already dead. In her mountain fortress, Dr. Kim watched the same sensor data. She thought about all the sleepless nights, all the failed experiments, all the sacrifices her team had made to reach this moment. "They picked the wrong planet," she whispered to herself. The stars watched in silence as the final countdown began. Grand Admiral Korvax had conquered 17 worlds personally. He had watched civilizations crumble before his fleet. He had accepted the surrender of kings, emperors, and presidents. He knew exactly how this moment was supposed to unfold. The primitives would see his armada and understand their situation. They would beg for mercy. They would offer anything to survive, and Korvax would grant them the honor of serving the Zarveth Empire as slaves. "Open a channel to the planet," Korvax commanded. "All frequencies. I want every creature on that rock to see my face and hear my words." The communications officer worked quickly. Within moments, Korvax's image was being broadcast to every screen on Earth. Televisions flickered, phones buzzed. Computer monitors switched over. 7 billion humans suddenly found themselves staring at a towering reptilian figure with golden scales and burning red eyes. Korvax spread his arms wide, his ceremonial armor gleaming. "Primitive species of the third planet. I am Grand Admiral Korvax of the Zarveth Imperial Armada. Your world has been selected for integration into our eternal empire." He paused, letting the words sink in. He had given this speech many times before. The reactions were always the same. Panic in the streets. Military forces scrambling uselessly. Leaders desperately trying to establish communication. "You will surrender immediately," Korvax continued. "Your resources, your technology, and your people now belong to the Zarveth Empire. Resistance is not merely futile. It is inconceivable. You possess nothing that can threaten even our smallest scout vessel. Your chemical rockets and explosive weapons are toys to us. Your metal ships would melt like snow before our shields." On Earth, the broadcast played everywhere, in homes and offices, in schools and hospitals, in military bases, and government buildings. The world watched in shock as the alien warlord delivered his ultimatum, but something strange was happening. In Houston, Mission Director Amy Santos stood in her control room, surrounded by her team of analysts. They watched the alien broadcast on their main screen. When Korvax finished speaking, Santos simply reached over and muted the audio. "Well," she said with a small smile, "they really don't check their intelligence before invading, do they?" Her team exchanged nervous glances. One young analyst named Kevin spoke up. "Ma'am, shouldn't we be panicking right now? That fleet could destroy us." Santos shook her head. "Kevin, I've worked for this agency for 20 years. Do you really think we've spent all that time just watching satellites and tracking asteroids? Trust me, the people who need to handle this are handling it." Similar scenes played out across the planet. While ordinary citizens stared at their screens in terror, those who knew the truth remained calm. Military officers continued their routines. Government officials went about their business. Scientists in hidden facilities double-checked their equipment. The world seemed to be panicking, but beneath the surface, humanity was quietly preparing to show its teeth. On the bridge of the Dominator, Korvax waited for the response that always came. The terrified transmission from a world leader. The pathetic attempt at negotiation. The offer of tribute in exchange for mercy. But the screens remained silent. Minutes passed. The fleet continued its slow approach toward Earth. Still no response came. Sub-Commander Varys checked his instruments for the third time. "Grand Admiral, the humans are not responding to our transmission. Their communication systems are functioning. They simply choose not to reply." Korvax felt a flicker of annoyance. "Perhaps they are still processing their situation. Give them more time." "There is something else, Grand Admiral." Varys brought up a tactical display. "Their military forces are not mobilizing. Their aircraft remain grounded. Their naval vessels stay in port. They are not even attempting to prepare a defense." End quote. End quote. This was unusual. Every species, no matter how primitive, at least tried to fight back. It was instinct. Even hopeless resistance was better than no resistance at all. But the humans were doing nothing. They were simply watching. They must be paralyzed by fear, Korvax decided. Their minds cannot process the scale of what they face. Continue the approach. But Varys felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had studied military tactics his entire life. He knew the difference between fear and something else. A species paralyzed by fear would be chaotic. Their leaders would be screaming. Their people would be rioting. The humans were not chaotic. They were quiet. They were still. They were waiting. "Grand Admiral," Varys said carefully, "perhaps we should send a scouting party first. Gather more intelligence before we commit the full fleet." Korvax turned to stare at his subordinate. His eyes burned with cold fire. "Are you suggesting that I, Grand Admiral of the Imperial Armada, should be cautious of primitives who have not even mastered faster than light travel? Should I fear creatures who still burn fossil fuels for energy?" Varys lowered his head. "No, Grand Admiral. I apologize. We have conquered 400 worlds." Korvax continued. "We have crushed civilizations 1,000 years more advanced than these humans. They are nothing. Less than nothing. Their silence is not strength, it is acceptance of their fate." He turned back to the main view screen, where the blue marble of Earth grew slowly larger. "All ships continue on course. We will enter orbit within 6 hours. Prepare ground forces for immediate deployment. I want this planet secured by tomorrow." Kroos. The orders went out across the fleet. 4 million soldiers checked their weapons. Thousands of landing craft powered up their engines. The war machine of the Zarveth Empire rolled forward. Unstoppable and supreme. None of them knew that deep beneath Earth's mountains, a woman named Laura Kim was watching their approach on her own screens. Her finger hovered over a button that would reshape the history of the galaxy. Around her, 20 scientists sat at their stations, systems fully powered and waiting. "They're getting closer," Ryan Parker said quietly. Kim nodded. "Let them come. We won't fire until we absolutely have to. But when we do fire, we only need to fire once." In Washington, Secretary Mercer watched the same tactical display. The alien fleet was crossing the orbit of Jupiter now, their massive ships like a swarm of dark locusts against the stars. His phone buzzed. It was General Cole. "They haven't responded to any communication attempts," Cole reported. "They're not interested in talking. This is pure conquest." Mercer sighed. "Then we give them one final warning, one chance to leave. And if they don't take it?" Mercer was silent for a long moment. "Then we do what we have to do. May God have mercy on us all." He hung up and stared out his window at the night sky. Somewhere, up there, death was approaching. But Earth was not as helpless as it appeared. The Zarveth Empire was about to learn a lesson that would echo across the universe forever. Humanity was done hiding. The Zarveth Armada crossed the orbit of Mars like a dark cloud swallowing the stars. 3,000 ships moved in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready, their soldiers eager for conquest. Grand Admiral Korvax stood at the center of his bridge, watching Earth grow larger on his view screen. The blue planet looked so fragile, so small, so easy to break. "We will enter Earth orbit in 90 minutes, reported the navigation officer. "All invasion forces are standing by," Korvax nodded with satisfaction. The silence from Earth had continued. No demands. No pleas for mercy. No desperate attempts at negotiation. The humans had clearly accepted their fate. Perhaps they were not as stupid as he had thought. Perhaps they understood that resistance would only bring greater suffering. Then every screen on every ship in the fleet flickered and changed. A human face appeared, a male with gray hair and hard eyes, wearing a simple military uniform. His expression was calm, almost bored. A small nameplate on his chest read, "General Nathan Cole." Korvax leaned forward with interest. Finally, the primitives were ready to talk. He expected tears. He expected begging. He expected the usual pathetic display that came before every surrender. Instead, the human simply spoke in a flat, emotionless voice. "This is General Nathan Cole of the United Earth Defense Command. You have entered sovereign human space without permission. You have broadcast threats against our planet and our people. You have made your intentions clear." Cole paused for a moment, his eyes seeming to look directly at Korvax through the screen. "You have 60 seconds to reverse course and leave our solar system. Every ship, no exceptions. This is not a negotiation. This is not a bluff. This is not a request. You have been warned." The transmission ended. For a moment, there was complete silence on the bridge of the Dominator. Then, Weapons Officer Therix let out a loud hiss of laughter. Other officers joined in. Soon the entire bridge was filled with the sounds of Zarveth amusement. Korvax himself chuckled, his scales rippling with mirth. 60 seconds? What do these primitives imagine they can do in 60 seconds? Therix ran calculations on his console, still grinning. "Grand Admiral, I have analyzed their military capabilities thoroughly. Even if they launched every nuclear weapon on their planet simultaneously, our shields would absorb the impact without the slightest flicker. Their missiles cannot reach us. Their aircraft cannot survive in space. They have nothing. Armor. Axe. Perhaps they will throw rocks at us," another officer joked. The laughter continued. The countdown meant nothing to them. They had heard threats before, from species far more advanced than humans. All of them had fallen just the same, but Sub-Commander Varys did not laugh. He watched his tactical display with growing unease. Something was happening on Earth. Energy readings were spiking from multiple locations beneath the planet's surface. Massive power signatures were activating, larger than anything he had ever seen. "Grand Admiral," Varys said quietly, "I am detecting unusual energy patterns from the planet." Korvax waved dismissively. "Their power plants, no doubt. Probably trying to charge whatever pitiful weapons they have." "No, sir. These readings are different. The energy levels are beyond anything in our database. They exceed even our own reactors by several orders of magnitude." Korvax finally turned to look at the display. The readings were indeed strange. Power signatures were emerging from deep underground, spreading across the planet like glowing veins beneath the skin of the world. What could generate such energy? Korvax wondered aloud. No one had an answer. 40 seconds remained. On Earth, Dr. Laura Kim stood at the center of the Prometheus control room, her eyes fixed on a holographic display of the alien fleet. Red dots representing each enemy ship hung in the darkness, approaching like a swarm of deadly insects. Target lock confirmed on all 3,000 vessels, Ryan Parker reported. Array is fully charged and stable. We are ready to fire on your command. Kim nodded slowly. She had spent 15 years building this weapon. 15 years of impossible physics, failed experiments, and sleepless nights. The technology they had developed did not just push the boundaries of science, it shattered them completely. The Prometheus array did not fire lasers or missiles or any conventional weapon. It manipulated the fundamental forces of reality itself. It could target the quantum bonds that held matter together and simply switch them off. One moment, something existed. The next moment, it did not. Kim had never wanted to use it on living beings. She had hoped this day would never come. But the choice was not hers to make. 30 seconds, Parker said quietly. In his mountain command center, General Cole watched the clock count down. His phone was connected directly to Secretary Mercer, who was connected directly to the President. The chain of command was clear. The authorization was given. They're not turning around, Cole said. No, Mercer replied. I didn't think they would. Cole closed his eyes for a moment. He was a soldier. He had made hard decisions before. He had sent men to die for their country. But this was different. This was genocide. 4 million living beings were about to be erased from existence. Is there no other way? He asked. They didn't give us another way. They came here to enslave or destroy our entire species. We did not start this, Nathan. We are simply ending it. End quote. 20 seconds remained. On the Dominator, Grand Admiral Korvax finally began to feel something he had not felt in centuries. It was small and unfamiliar, like a cold needle in the back of his mind. It took him a moment to recognize it. Fear. The energy readings from Earth were still climbing. Whatever the humans were powering up, it was massive beyond comprehension. His instruments could not even properly measure it anymore. Should we raise shields to maximum? Varys asked. Korvax hesitated. Raising shields would look like weakness. It would suggest that he, the greatest admiral in the Empire, was afraid of primitives. The other officers would talk, his reputation would suffer, but the feeling in his gut would not go away. 10 seconds remained. All ships, Korvax ordered, raise shields to full power. Across the fleet, purple energy barriers flickered to life around every vessel. The Zarvith shields were legendary. They had stopped planet-killer weapons. They had survived the heart of stars. Nothing in the known universe could penetrate them. 5 seconds remained. Dr. Kim's finger hovered over the final activation control. Her hand was steady. Her heart was calm. Fire, said General Cole's voice in her earpiece. She pressed the button, and the universe changed forever. The Prometheus array activated with a sound that was not quite a sound. It was more like a vibration that traveled through the bones of the planet itself. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, massive crystalline structures hummed with energy that defied the laws of physics as the galaxy understood them. Power flowed through circuits made of materials that did not exist in nature, channeled by equations that other species had declared impossible. The array did not fire a beam. It did not launch a projectile. Instead, it reached out across millions of miles of empty space and simply changed the rules of reality. On the bridge of the Dominator, Grand Admiral Korvax felt something strange. A tingling sensation spread across his scales. The air seemed to shimmer and twist around him. His instruments went crazy, displaying readings that made no sense. What is happening? He demanded. No one answered. No one could answer. The effect took exactly 1.7 seconds to complete. In that brief moment, the Prometheus array identified every atom in every ship of the Zarvith fleet. It calculated the quantum bonds holding those atoms together, and then, with surgical precision, it severed those bonds. Grand Admiral Korvax had time for one final thought. It was not about his empire. It was not about his legacy. It was a simple, terrified realization that the primitive species he had come to conquer was not primitive at all. Then he stopped existing. Across the entire fleet, the same thing happened simultaneously. Warships that had destroyed civilizations simply came apart at the atomic level. Metal dissolved into nothing. Energy shields collapsed into void. 4 million soldiers vanished without even the chance to scream. There was no explosion. There was no flash of light. There was no debris field left behind. One moment, 3,000 ships occupied the space between Mars and Earth. The next moment, there was only empty vacuum. As if the fleet had never existed at all, the stars watched in silence as the mightiest armada in 3 galaxies was erased from the universe. In the Prometheus control room, Dr. Laura Kim stared at her display. The 3,000 red dots representing enemy ships had simply disappeared. Her instruments confirmed what her eyes could not believe. The targets were gone, not destroyed, not disabled, gone. Ryan Parker's hands trembled over his console. Complete erasure confirmed. All targets eliminated. 0 debris detected. 0 survivors detected. Kim slowly lowered herself into a chair. She had built this weapon. She had understood the theory behind it. But seeing it work, seeing 3,000 ships and 4 million lives simply cease to exist, was something entirely different. "What have we done?" she whispered. "We survived," Parker replied softly. "That's what we did." At the edge of the solar system, a small Zarveth scout ship had remained behind to record the conquest. Junior observer Lyrics was young, barely old enough to serve in the Imperial fleet. Her job was simple. Watch the invasion. Document the human surrender. Send the recordings back to the Empire as proof of another glorious victory. Instead, she watched in frozen horror as her entire species' greatest achievement vanished from her sensors. One moment, her screen showed 3,000 ships. The weapons signatures, the life signs, the communication chatter. Everything that represented the power and majesty of the Zarveth Empire. The next moment, there was nothing. Lyrics ran the sensors again, and again, and again. She checked for debris. She checked for escape pods. She checked for any sign that the fleet had existed at all. Nothing. Absolute nothing. Her hands began to shake. Her breathing became rapid and shallow. This was impossible. This could not happen. The Zarveth shields were invincible. Their armor was unbreakable. No weapon in the known universe could destroy even one of their warships so completely, let alone 3,000 at once. But her instruments did not lie. The fleet was gone. Grand Admiral Korvax was gone. 4 million of her fellow soldiers were gone. They had not been defeated in battle. They had not been outmaneuvered or outgunned. They had simply been erased. Like words, wiped from a page, Lyrics did the only thing she could do. She turned her ship around and fled into hyperspace, carrying the only record of what had happened in the skies above Earth. Back on the planet, General Nathan Cole received confirmation of the operation's success. He sat alone in his command center, surrounded by screens showing empty space where the enemy fleet had been. His coffee had gone cold hours ago. He did not reach for it. "It's done," he said into his phone. "Total elimination." Secretary Mercer's voice came back, heavy with exhaustion. "Casualties on our side?" "None." "They never got close enough to fire a shot." There was a long pause. "And on their side?" Cole thought about the number. 4 million. 4 million living beings who had woken up that morning expecting to conquer a primitive world. 4 million soldiers, officers, technicians, and crew members. They had families somewhere. Children who would never see their parents again. Parents who would never know what happened to their children. "Complete," Cole said simply. "No survivors." Mercer was silent for a long moment. "God forgive us." "God might. I'm not sure we should forgive ourselves." On Orbital Defense Station Sentinel, Commander Daniel Hayes and Lieutenant Katie Brooks watched the final sensor readings come in. The alien fleet had completely vanished. There was no evidence that it had ever existed at all. "What happened to them?" Brooks asked quietly. Hayes shook his head slowly. "I don't know exactly. I don't think I want to know." But they made a choice when they came here. They chose to threaten our world. They chose to ignore our warning. And now they're gone. Will there be more? Will they send another fleet? Hayes finally picked up his cold coffee and took a long drink. Maybe. Probably. But word will spread about what happened here today. Every empire, every hostile species, every would-be conqueror will hear the story. And they'll have to ask themselves a question. What question? Hayes looked at the stars through the station viewport. Somewhere out there, civilizations were going about their business, unaware that the balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted forever. Is Earth worth the risk? In her underground facility, Dr. Kim finally stood up from her chair. Her team was quiet around her, processing what they had witnessed. They had just killed more beings in 2 seconds than all the wars in human history combined. Power down the array, Kim ordered. Lock the system and begin post-operation analysis. Her people moved to obey, grateful to have something to do. Kim walked to the window that overlooked the massive chamber housing the Prometheus array. The crystalline structures were dimming now, their terrible work complete. She had saved her planet. She had saved her species. She had also proven that humanity was capable of destruction, on a scale that should terrify even themselves. We're not the same anymore, she said to no one in particular. We can never go back to being innocent. The universe was watching now. And humanity had just announced its presence in the most dramatic way possible. Junior Observer Lyrix's small scout ship tore through hyperspace at maximum speed. Her hands had not stopped shaking since she fled the solar system. The recording of what happened played on a loop in her mind, burned into her memory forever. 3,000 ships, 4 million soldiers, gone in less than 2 seconds. She did not stop at the nearest outpost. She did not report to her immediate superiors. She flew directly to the Imperial homeworld, broadcasting her recordings on every military frequency along the way. By the time she arrived, the entire empire already knew. The Zarveth Imperial Council convened an emergency session within hours. The massive chamber, which had witnessed 400 proclamations of conquest, was silent for the first time in living memory. Admirals, generals, and governors sat frozen in their seats, watching the recording again and again. Emperor Zorvath himself descended from his throne to stand before the main display. He was ancient by Zarveth standards. His scales faded to a dull bronze. His eyes clouded by centuries of rule. He had ordered the conquest of 100 worlds personally. He had built the greatest military force in 3 galaxies. And he had just watched that force disappear like smoke in the wind. How? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. How is this possible? His science advisors had no answer. His military commanders had no explanation. The technology that destroyed the fleet did not match anything in their databases. It did not operate on any principle they understood. It simply reached across millions of miles of space and unmade matter itself. The primitives, muttered High Admiral Crix, one of the few senior officers who had not been aboard the invasion fleet. We called them primitives. We laughed at their chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. They were hiding, said another voice. All along, they were hiding what they could really do. Emperor Zorvath stared at the empty space where his armada had been. For 3 centuries, the Zarvath Empire had spread across the stars, taking whatever they wanted, crushing whoever stood in their way. They had believed themselves invincible. They had believed the universe belonged to them. Now they knew the truth. There was a predator in the darkness that they had mistaken for prey. Send no more ships to that system, Zorvath commanded. Place the coordinates of Earth on the forbidden list. No Zarvath vessel is to approach within 10 light-years of their star. And if they come for us? Asked Crix. The Emperor had no answer. For the first time in his long life, he understood what it felt like to be powerless. On Earth, life continued much as it always had. The governments of the world agreed on a cover story. A solar flare had caused some satellite interference. Strange lights in the sky were explained as unusual atmospheric phenomena. The truth was buried in classified files that only a handful of people would ever see. Most humans went to sleep that night never knowing how close they had come to extinction. They never knew that aliens had threatened their world. They never knew that their species had just killed 4 million beings in the blink of an eye. Perhaps it was better that way. 3 days after the invasion, General Cole and Dr. Kim sat together in a small conference room deep beneath the mountains. 2 cups of coffee steamed on the table between them. Neither had slept much since the event. "The recordings are spreading across the galaxy," Cole said. "Our intelligence networks are picking up communications from dozens of species. They're all talking about what happened." Kim nodded slowly. "What are they saying?" "They're afraid. Terrified, actually. The Zarveth were the biggest military power anyone knew. They conquered entire civilizations for fun, and we erased them like they were nothing." Cole paused. "Some species are calling us the new apex predators of the universe. Is that what we are now? Predators?" Cole sighed and rubbed his tired eyes. "We're whatever we choose to be. But after today, no one is going to try to invade Earth again. The cost is too high. The risk is too great." Kim thought about the weapon she had built, the terrible power that now slept beneath the mountains, waiting to be awakened again. She had created it to protect humanity, but she also understood that it made them something new, something dangerous. "We need to send a message," she said. "Not a threat. The galaxy already knows what we can do. We need to show them what we choose to do." "They want—" Cole raised an eyebrow. "What do you have in mind?" 2 weeks later, a transmission was broadcast from Earth on every known frequency. It traveled at the speed of light, spreading outward in all directions, reaching colony worlds, space stations, and starships across the galaxy. Every species with the technology to receive it heard the same message. A human female appeared on screens across the universe. She was older, with gray hair and kind eyes, wearing civilian clothes rather than a military uniform. Her name was Ambassador Linda Hayes, and she spoke with warmth that seemed impossible given recent events. "To all civilizations of the galaxy, greetings from Earth and the human species. We reach out today not as conquerors or threats, but as potential friends and partners." She paused, letting the words sink in. "You have heard what happened to the Zarveth Imperial Armada. You have seen the recordings. You know what we are capable of doing. We do not apologize for defending our home and our people. Any species that threatens us will meet the same fate." Her expression softened. "But destruction is not our purpose. War is not our dream. We have spent our history divided against each other, fighting and killing over resources and territory and belief. We are tired of violence. We want something better." Images appeared alongside her words. Humans creating art, humans playing music, humans helping each other after natural disasters, children laughing, families embracing. "We extend our hand in friendship to any species that approaches us in peace. We offer trade, cultural exchange, scientific cooperation, and mutual respect. We ask nothing except to be treated as equals." The ambassador leaned forward slightly, her eyes seeming to look directly at every viewer across the galaxy. "We have shown you what we can do when threatened. Now we want to show you what we can do as allies. The choice is yours. When Cludot biznas. When Cludot are down round'em. I'm work inside. When Cludot our business." The transmission ended. Across the universe, countless species watched and wondered. They saw the humans who had destroyed the most powerful fleet in history. They saw the hand of friendship being offered. They understood the message behind the words. Humanity was not looking for trouble. But if trouble came looking for them, they were ready. On Earth, Ambassador Hayes stepped away from the recording studio. General Cole was waiting for her in the hallway. "Do you think they'll listen?" she asked. Cole smiled slightly. "Some will. Some won't. But at least now they know the full truth about us." "And what truth is that?" Cole looked out a window at the blue sky above. Somewhere beyond that sky, beyond the stars themselves, civilizations were deciding how to respond to humanity's message. Some would become friends. Some would become enemies. The future was uncertain. But one thing was clear. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and they were no longer hiding in the shadows. The truth Cole said quietly, is that our hand of friendship is always preferred. But it's not our only hand. And a freed getting rolling. Eye presses. The stars had been watching humanity for thousands of years, waiting to see what kind of species they would become. Now they had their answer, and the galaxy would never be the same.